Okay. Welcome to After Work and another installment of our Road to Cambridge series. My name's Saadadeen.
And my name is Suhaiymah. Today we are lucky to be joined by a very good friend. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Please
Hi, I'm Suhaiymah Manzoor-Khan. I went to Queen's College. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, what did you study?
I studied history at Queen's like 3 years ago. So I graduated 3 years ago.
Cool. And what do you do now?
So I work part-time for a charity called Maslaha. We work with like Muslim communities basically. And then I part-time freelance, so writing, poetry, speaking, workshops, that kind of, it's a mishmash of things.
Cool, perfect. So to start the kind of conversation that we're about to have, I'm going to quickly outline the structure of the podcast for both you and the listeners. So we're going to be going through your journey chronologically. So we're going to start with your early life, your primary school experience, your kind of your family, your neighborhood, and how all of those external factors kind of influence your relationship with education.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second section will be your secondary school experience, both GCSE and A levels, and kind of your mindset and growth and development during that kind of phase. And then the third section will be your time at Cambridge, studying history at Queen's, and just about the social life, your kind of your academic life and your extracurricular life.
Okay.
And then we'll touch upon your kind of your time after leaving Cambridge. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Sad's going to start with the first set of questions.
Okay, so let's start at the start. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your background, your family, and how that all contributed to the relationship you had with education.
Okay, so I mean to start at the very start, my grandparents migrated from Pakistan to West Yorkshire in the 1960s. My mum was like 6 months or something. I'm brought up by my mum basically. So I think a big emphasis in her life was we have to get like education's the thing. I think for a lot of first generation immigrants, like that's gonna change our life. And then I think that had a huge influence on me and my upbringing. And I think also what had a big influence was that I think a lot of the things that she wanted me to have was stuff that she didn't have because she was first generation. So she had I think that she put a lot of emphasis on like, basically, I think it's almost interesting because it's kind of like things that she thought other people think you have to do to like get a good education, if that makes sense. So it'd be like, oh, you should play tennis. Do you know what I mean? Like quite random, like really random. Right, yeah, exactly. So there was that side of it, but then also like, I think I just was genuinely like a curious child. But like I loved reading. Like my favorite film was Matilda. I took a box to the library every week. I'd like fill the box with books. I just loved reading. That was like my that was my everything.
The first book you read?
First book. I don't remember the first book, but I remember like vivid ones like my year one teacher gave me the Iron Man. I don't know if you remember. Don't you remember the Iron Man?
I think I remember books. No, not the comic book.
No, not the comic book. There's he's called Iron Man, right?
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
It's just like I can't really remember.
Right?
It's not picture book. It's an actual book. It's an actual textual book. No, stop it, finish it. But yeah, she gave me that and she signed it. She like fully signed it and she was like, because you love reading. Anyway, that was. But what else? Yeah, just like Roald Dahl, that kind of thing. I don't know, like PR for Roald Dahl. But yeah, So.
What about the area that you kind of grew up in?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I look back on it, my primary school compared to my high school was in quite a white middle class area, and so I actually was like much more in a minority, like in terms of like ethnicity, there than I was at my high school, and like our street. Oh, to be honest, when we moved in, our street was like quite diverse, but then obviously over time, like it's like a lot of white professionals, but. Yeah, I don't know how much influence that had because I'm still the people I interacted with weren't really my neighborhood. It was just a lot of Asian people basically. And my family, my cousins had a really big impact. They lived in Bradford, we lived in Leeds, and we would go to my grandparents' house every week. They lived in Bradford, and I think just that kind of, like if I think of my childhood, I just think of like family and just like I don't really know. I don't know. It's only looking back that I could think how maybe some of those things influenced me. But I think just like the big thing of like you like make the most of your life by like going to school, like doing well at school, like being interested in things, and and I don't think that's a unique narrative.
You mentioned that the teacher gave you a book and signed it. Do you think that is a constant theme and that teachers saw that you were quite curious and encouraged you?
Yeah, I think I was actually very, very blessed that I think a lot of teachers, I think it was like a two-way thing. Like I think I was a very like nerdy kid. Like I was very like, yes, I'll do all the homework to like the most extra standard. Like you said, write a chapter, I'll write a book. You know what I mean? And I think obviously that spoke to teachers, and they would always be like, okay, she's like keen. And so they would often, you know, and I think I benefited in the sense that I was someone for whom the school system worked really well. Like I did well in exams, I did well in assessments, I could write quite well. And that's not true even for some of my own siblings, you know. And so we could go to the very same schools, the same upbringing and everything. We had quite different experiences just because I really blossomed in those situations. So yeah, it was very much the case that, you know, teachers would always be like, Suhaiymah's like brilliant at this, like she loves this, she's throwing herself in, la la la. So which, you know, is not, it's just that that was a really good environment. And I think also the thing where it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, I feel like, you know, if you the more you do well at school, the more teachers are like, you're gonna do well. So, you know, and just things like always being on the clever table and that being like a self-fulfilling, because you're like, oh, I must be clever, that's
it's hard
great.
to break out that reputation that like, kind of is superimposed on you.
Exactly. And I think it's like that hierarchy already comes in quite early, which is, I don't know, like a few years ago I saw somebody who I went to primary school with, and I was like, how's everything going? And it was just really, I don't know, because he was like, oh, it's not like being on the clever table anymore. And I was like, whoa, that's actually quite like, whew.
Mad.
But yeah, but anyway. Yeah, I know, right? I actually wrote a about it, but anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, that's
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Go on. Don't want to drop no more water.
I need my water up there.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have anything to add about that. Is that
Cool.
yeah.
What's next? Do you want to move on to secondary school?
Yeah. So West Yorkshire, your secondary school. Tell us a little bit about that. What kind of school you went to?
So that was such a London thing to say. So West Yorkshire, Yorkshire and the Humber, Leeds, Leeds.
Wait, what's more specific? West Yorkshire.
Leeds is a city in the UK. West Yorkshire. Oh my god!
You know what I mean?
How can you even? Wow. Okay.
Okay, so Leeds school, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Tell us a little bit about your what kind
What are we talking about? High school?
Yeah,
Yes,
high school.
High school, yeah, okay. So I went to Roundhay High School, which I back, and it was really good because what it is, in my opinion, this is a fully my narrative. You can ask my brother; he has a very different narrative. But is that it was the catchment area was so that you had a really good spread of like class and race. And the reason I think that was important is that so you had like your white middle class area here. And I believe that like because you have those kids there and you have those parents putting the pressure on the school to keep the standards what they would want, because they're like, well, you know, I could have sent my kids to private school instead, you know, I would have done that if I had. But then that benefited like all the like black and brown kids who majority from like, you know, other areas are more working class areas. And I think that kept the standards, and a big white working class area as well, actually. And I think that meant that it was like we all, I don't know, I think it made it a really interesting place. And for me, it definitely shaped how I thought the world was. I was like, this is like exactly what the world must be like. Everybody's got different experiences, but like everybody should have access to the same things. And I think, but it was also the first time I think where I became very aware of like inequity in very obvious ways, where you were like, well, you know, there's no reason that, you know, somebody else should not get the same things that I'm getting, but they're not getting it because, you know, they've not got the same support at home or whatever. So I think I would say it was interesting because the school was like, I don't know, it was like, so it was like Ofsted was like, oh, it's outstanding. It was like a good state school. It was, but it depended who you were as well, you know. And I think I benefited, like, again, and I say this because I think I see it a lot between me and my siblings, is that like, you know, like my brother, so it's not about my brother, but like, for example, just to show you, like he was in isolation every day, like my mum was being called in all the time, and, you know, like he wasn't doing well. On the other hand, they were like, do you want to join Gifted and Talented? Do you want to join whatever? And so I think it was a bit of like if they saw you as...
What kind of students do you feel like your secondary schools kind of failed, if that makes sense? Like, how would you characterize a student?
I suppose just the ones that they allow to fall off the radar. And I think that's like, I don't think it's my school specifically. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just that, I basically think that like, if you have the social capital at home and economic capital at home, so if you have like parents who went to university, or you have like, just like, even just like a support system that is in place when you come home, someone who will be like, oh, have you done your homework? To me, then whatever school you go to, it won't really matter. because you have the tools to do just as well wherever you go. If you don't have that at home, then I think it really does matter the school that you go to and whether they like invest in you, because you're not you can have very different experiences in the same environment. And yeah, I think I was lucky. And like, you know, my mum was like really worried about the high school I was going to go. You know, before I went there, like the year before, I think, or whatever, there was all this like, you know, police always coming to the school and all this stuff about like, oh, there's all this violence going on, and she was really worried. And you know, I was like, well, my friends are all going there, I want to go there, because that was like, you know, most people from my primary school went to two high schools in the area, so I went to this one. Yeah, so but it was in general it was like. It was great. I loved high school. I thought it was great. Yeah.
How did you feel when you first started?
Excited. Yeah, because it was like big school, you know, it was like exciting, but really like scared as well, because it's like I was tiny, you know, everyone's really big, and I think that feeling that you got to like prove yourself all over again, because I think once you're in year 6, you're established, you know.
You're a big man. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I fully remember that.
I remember like, because I remember going into year 7, and I think within like the second month, I was like, this school's dead. I want to move.
Oh, really?
I was calling up other schools.
Really?
I was like, I'm in a new school, man. This school's rubbish.
What was it? Why was it rubbish?
I don't actually remember why. But I just remember thinking, this school's whack, man.
Did you have friends from
Did a lot of
primary
people?
school
Yeah,
like that?
exactly.
No, because this school's in a different area.
See, that makes a big difference. Yeah.
It was. I remember going home because everyone used to live in one area. I used to live in another.
Yeah.
So I remember going home a different way. And I just remember thinking, nah, man, this school's dead. I want to go to school in my area.
It's a bit lonely,
Okay.
isn't it? It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So I remember that in year 7. But it just reminded me. I remember calling up the schools. That was like the most proactive thing I did.
As you yourself were phoning them.
Yeah,
That's
like,
really
I don't know what I'm
intense.
gonna
As a
say,
year
like,
7.
yeah, I'm in year 7. I want to put in a move. I want to put in a move.
You must have been quite like affected though to do that. That must have been something that was genuinely.
I mean, I think I was like for that week.
It's
You know what I mean?
okay,
But then
yeah,
after that, I
okay,
did not
done.
pull him back because, and I didn't think about it again.
That's
but
really
yeah.
funny. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I think that I just remember there was stuff like that was. I remember like the first time I saw a fight in the playground, and I was like, oh my god! And I remember just going home and being like, and then these people, and then they were like actually just punching, like actual punch,
Were
like.
you the type of kind of child to kind of narrate your whole school day to your
Oh,
parents?
100%,
Every time-
100%.
Yeah,
I was out
yeah.
here like 8 a.m. early. I was like every day. And my brother and my sister, the opposite. They're just like, oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out here like, so Alice Bader did this, and then Luke Birch went there, and then la 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 la.
Yeah.
Were you like that?
No, I was the opposite. I was more like your siblings.
Oh,
my
really?
brother was more like you.
Okay,
He'd
okay.
come home and be like, Mom, this happened, this happened, this happened.
I just felt like, do you not feel like you have to process every element of
Yeah,
the.
it's true, but not necessarily needing to kind of vocalize it. You know what I mean? You could just,
What was
but
your
yeah.
mum- what was your mum's reaction? Was just like,
Oh, she was fully invested. No,
Really?
like,
She was
yeah,
fine, like,
she's like,
engaged,
so
like,
she'd be like, I
active
come home the
audience,
next
yeah?
day, and she'd be like, you know, what happened to Alana? Like, what happened?
What
Yeah,
happened to Luke Birch?
exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's what I mean as well about having like, you know, that's someone has given me the time, investing in me in that way. So then you kind of believe that you're as important as you are, you know.
So, Leman, you mentioned something interesting about that. A lot of the people that are here, I remember something along the lines of like they have like a particular relationship with like someone in their family, in that they can like chat to
Really?
often.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that's
definitely.
true because like that develops your like critical thinking.
That's
you're able to
interesting.
articulate thoughts. You don't have to think too much about it, and that's a big part of like the application process here.
That's
in
true.
That, like where you're supervised and how you respond to being challenged and
Yeah.
and ask a different question and for a lot of people that's kind of like a natural thing.
That's really interesting.
And so I think for others you have to like learn on the job.
That's really interesting, actually.
100%.
I think also I remember something that my mum would always be like when it was exams and stuff. She'd always say like, "I imagine that you're explaining something to me," but all she meant by that was that like I think that taught me a way of like talking about things in a very like you have to be very clear about what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? And be like just accessible, not being like, "Oh, the volcano is made." I don't know. That was very accessible. I don't know what I was going to say. But like, yeah, and I think that definitely carried over into, for example, the Cambridge interview because it's like. You like that's what you have to do. You explain like your whole thought process step by step, and yeah, that's an interesting
Speaking
point.
of Cambridge, you were at secondary school. You were invited to gifted and talented and things like that. At what point did those sort of higher elite institutions come into the vocabulary for you?
Yeah, so it's weird because even though I was kind of like, you know, like one of the sort of like academic like students, I I genuinely didn't know you had to apply to university until sixth form. I just thought, I was like, some people go, some don't, you know? And yeah. I was like, oh, you know, when it comes to it, it comes to it. And it was only, I remember I had a friend who was like, oh, Suhaiymah, we should go to Oxford and we'll stay in and I was like, 6, sounds fine. Like, I didn't really, do you know what I mean? I just had no idea. I knew like Oxford and Cambridge were probably like, they're seen as like good, but I was like, you know, what, like, I live in Leeds is also good. Like, you know, come on, calm down. But yeah, what it was that basically it was a very like specific thing. And when I was in year 12, this woman came in who was basically like, now I know, she was like Selwyn College like access officer.
Oh, yeah.
But she was young, she was really young, so she was probably like, she was in her early 20s, and she came in and she like spoke normally. She wasn't super posh. She was white, but she wasn't like, she just was young and not posh. And yeah, she came in and she was just like, okay, so like, I don't know if you guys have like considered where you want to apply for university. And I was like, oh no. And she was just like, yeah, you know, you should apply to Cambridge for these reasons. And I just remember it was really interesting because I was like, oh my God, she just made it sound like it's actually something that just like anyone can do. And I remember, and my mum always says this to me. She's like, you came home and you were just like, this woman just said that like we can just apply. Because I thought like, obviously from state school, you probably just won't go there because why, I don't know.
How many people from the school kind of went on average?
So historically, like, I think there was, in the year before me, there was like one guy.
Okay.
Year before that, maybe no one. Year before that, maybe one guy. Like, it wasn't like a thing. It was just like, you know, and I think probably in those cases, because I think it's fair to guess that their parents were probably Oxbridge educated.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it wasn't like, or maybe
tradition.
2 in the year before me. Yeah, but it wasn't a tradition. No, it definitely wasn't a tradition. But yeah, and I think the thing that really struck me was just stuff that because I think I thought like, you know, you need to have like, I don't know, you need to have like all these qualifications of some kind that we just won't have. But I remember it because she did history, and that really struck me because I really loved history. I really loved English and I really loved history, and I wasn't sure which one I would want to do. And she said, and I was like, but how did you show an interest in history? Because I was like, I find it really hard to read history books, to be honest with you. And I don't, like, where do you go to show you're interested in history? I don't go to museums, I don't go to archives. And she was like, oh, do you know what? Like, sometimes I just listen to this show on the radio called something. And I was like, but I was like, whoa, so I could do that. Do you know what I mean? I could listen to a radio show. So that had a really big impact on me. And then I think also just because my history teacher was so invested in me, Mr. Pearson, he was just like, you know, like, we should do this, you should do this, you can do this. But also, like, they had no idea what they were doing. Like, in hindsight, no offense to them, but they would agree as well. Like, we did some weird, because they were like, we're going to do some interview practice. It was so hard, so much harder than the Cambridge interview, because they were out here like, in your personal statement, line 3, you say, that obviously just never happened. But yeah.
That's really
interesting.
Did you have any sort of experience like that? Having done history as well. Did you have like, I really want to do history, but I don't like.
Did you know you wanted to do just history?
For me, it was very much humanities, politics, international relations. Those were my interests. Those were the things that I kind of, if they were on the news, I'd sit down and listen to.
Okay.
But very similar to you, my history teacher was very invested in me. So her kind of efforts and kind of energy to ensure that I fulfill my potential with regards to my studies in history motivated me to kind of go down that path. So I told her, I was like, should I do history and politics? Because it seems a bit more comprehensive. Like, I get to do 2 things I love. She's like, no, do history, because I did history, and you'll be a proper historian, and if you just do what you mean, you just focus on history. I was like, cool. Like, I'm happy to just do history, and I'm happy with my decision.
Okay, interesting.
But what I want to go into a little bit more kind of further is your relationship with the subjects.
I was going to say, I should probably say,
talk more about,
so at A-level, I did history, English literature, geography, and we all had to do general studies. And I did maths AS, but dropped that after AS. So I was like, I'm done with that. But I loved those 3. I loved English, geography, and history, human geography. But I was just like, I'm not sure. And so actually now, just when you raised it then, I just remembered, I actually applied for like a range of different things. I applied for history and politics at UCL. I applied for this course that was like mixed humanities, where you could do like a bit of geography, a bit of English, a bit of history, a bit of politics, at Durham. But when I went to Durham Open Day, I was like, I don't want to go here, this is bad. And then straight history here, but obviously. Yeah.
There was no history and politics then?
There wasn't. Oh, there is. Yeah. But also they did, because obviously they do, because the thing is, they do at Oxford, they do history and English. And I was like, but they have a test for doing history, and I was like, I'm not doing a test.
Okay.
So
only, I had to do a test.
Did you get here?
Yeah, they introduced the test like 2
oh,
years
I
ago.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Was it hard?
I don't want to sound like it. It was alright. It was okay.
It was easy.
I haven't received a mark for it.
Was it a comprehension?
Yeah. What was it?
It was basically you have to write a contrast essay. I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, compare and contrast essay. So they gave you 2 articles,
Oh,
and you just had to compare and contrast.
okay.
Something I haven't done since GCSE.
Yeah, I did one. Like I remember doing it. Like I had to do a test, yeah, and I swear the skills I learned were the ones I learned in primary school. Comprehension. So you watch the lecture,
Yeah.
and it's like, so what did this
Really?
person mean when he said?
No.
Obviously, at the end you have to do like a bit more critical
Okay,
thinking,
Yeah.
and based off the. But I remember doing that in primary school all the time.
Really?
Like, they'll give you like a text, yeah.
Yeah, you mean
and
this? Yeah, the
comprehension.
Yeah, comprehension.
Yeah,
test,
it's
yeah.
like, but then you have to like, what does this mean? And you begin with the sentence.
Okay.
This means that, and then you just
Wow.
essentially like rephrase.
Yeah. What they
it
said. That's funny.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Before we go into your A levels, I just want to quickly touch upon your GCSE exams.
Yeah.
So like those were your first big state exams. Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
remember your
State
mindset kind of going into them? Were you nervous?
Militant.
Militant. I was counter-revolutionary. No, I think I was. But I didn't. The thing is that because I was quite a nerd, like I had for like like year 9 exam, I did the same. Do you know what I mean? I was I was just like revision is a really serious thing. Like mocks are really serious. You have to like make your notes and then make your notes again and then make them again and then. So I think by the time it was GCSEs, I was like I know my technique. I know what I'm doing. But I think I wasn't nervous because we had done a lot of mocks and I kind of knew like I just felt basically the big thing was I just knew that like once you understand. This is my big like pitch to all my like siblings. I was like, the only thing you need to do is do as many past papers as you can and look at the mark scheme. Just read them. I was like, just read the mark scheme. If you do nothing else, just read the mark scheme because that will show you how the examiner's looking at your exam, what they're thinking. And I remember one of my geography teacher said to me, he was like, I not invigilate, I like mark some GCSE papers. And I just remember being like, wait, so if he marks, and I was like, oh my God, I understand exactly who these people are now. And they're just ordinary people, And so I was like, all I have to do is signal to them, I have understood this question. Look, here's my evidence. Here is my other evidence. And so I think I really got the knack of like the strategy of exams rather than like, oh my God, I need to learn 100 million things. Exactly. Which I think definitely also helped, like with the Cambridge process as well. But yeah, so I think I wasn't nervous, but I was like, this is serious. And yeah, I was very like determined and like kind of, like, I don't know how like this is my timetable and I stick to it and I do it. But that is kind of just what I am like in general as well. So I don't know if I think that benefited me in that situation, but it kind of would be very out of character for me to not have done that as well.
For me, what's really interesting about your kind of mindset at GCSE, first of all, it's very self-motivated, which you say is a lot to do with your kind of character as an individual. But I want to kind of unpack that a little bit more. So talk more, if you can. Were there any mentors or were there any people within your kind of close circle, family members, friends, that you looked up to, that you kind of attempted to emulate? Because right now it's very unique. You're only like, you say that your siblings weren't like you, your parents, I don't know. So where did this come from, essentially?
Yeah, I think it is just like not. I think it's probably from a bit of like a. What do they call it? You're like you're a bit of a perfectionist, where you're like, I can't. Like I think in my head, and maybe I'm a bit still this way, where it's like, if you tell me to do anything, I'm like I have to do that to the best. Like if I don't, I'll let you down, I'll let me down, I'll let everyone here down.
Where does this come from?
I don't know. It's interesting. No one's ever asked me that, because I'm just thinking if you asked my family that. I think they would be equally, because like this is the narrative in my family is the same thing, that people are just like, oh, Suhaiymah's weird, like no, like we don't get that. She just doing her own. No, my brother's just like, you're not. No, it's not even that though. It's just like the weird like. But I think probably the attitude that underpins it just comes from my mum, in the sense of like, that you strive for the life that you want to have, and I think that. I was just kind of like this. It was almost formulaic. It's like if you say to me, if you say to me, you'll get 11 A stars at GCSE if you do every single past paper, look at all the mark schemes, write all the revision notes from this textbook and that textbook. I'll go, how many weeks do I have? Let me fit it in.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? Like it's
reverse engineer everything.
yeah, kind of, yeah.
How was that received through your years of GCSE and A-level? Were your parents like you mentioned, Suhaiymah was weird, like let her do it? Or was it like gas, like yes, Suhaiymah, you smashed it? Like, were siblings like that? Or
It was just kind of like she's doing her own thing because it wasn't like it wasn't doing it in a big way. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess like from year 8 or year 9, I just had like, I would just like make a list every day. That's my thing. I would just be like, school, come home 1 hour, geography homework, second hour, like practice. Yeah, I'm weird. Like I don't know how to, yeah. So I think,
that's amazing.
I don't know, maybe there's like something I need to unpack about why it's a bit controlling though, but yeah. But I think it did help. And it helped me get loads of stuff done because like when I was at sixth form, the thing is I wasn't just, oh, sorry, you're talking about GCSE. But I suppose even when I was doing GCSEs, I wasn't just, like I was doing a lot of stuff outside of school at the same time. So I feel like it was useful.
What kind of stuff?
I guess so early high school, I would be like, yeah, is that true? Yeah, early high school. Most days after school, I would go to like a madrasa, like learning Arabic, whatever, after school. And then I would also do like, I did like swimming, tennis, hockey, judo. Like I did a lot of sports, and that was like do you know what I mean? Like that's most of the days of the week. I used to play piano. I used to play flute. So I was busy. Busy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like everything.
That's funny.
Were all those extracurriculars because you're like, yeah, I want to be I want to be a judo champion. I want to be an Olympic swimmer and all that.
I think
just like
not really. It was more just like, oh, that looks
why
like, yeah. So I think like something like hockey was because like, you know, my friends at school were doing it, so I was like, oh, I'll do that too. And also like weirdly, I think like when I was especially when I was leaving primary school, I like considered myself sporty. I was like, oh, I'm sporty, which is just like that's an identity I've dropped. That's an intersection I don't identify with. But I think it's because I was, I know no one's asking, but I think because when I was in year 6, I was like really big for my age, and everyone was like, oh, Simon's strong, she's tall, and I was like 6, and then I just never, like that was it. That was year 6 was like the end. But anyway, so yeah, so I was I don't know.
So you mentioned how you kind of alluded to the fact that at sixth form you had more kind of extracurricular stuff that you were dealing with and that you were kind of involved with. Mm-hmm. So like talk more about your sixth form experience.
Yeah, so sixth form, let's think. So sixth form was, I was doing less like sports and stuff like that, but I was doing a lot of so I was like the chair of my sixth form committee, which was just long because probably I made it more long than it needed to be because I was like, oh, I need a list for this. But like it was just like, you know, a lot of like, right, like organising. But it's so funny looking back because I organised the sixth form parties that I didn't go to. Like I was like, okay, we just done it. Yeah, exactly, literally. Or like, and then like the prom and like.
Is this basically head girl?
I said probably, but we don't really, we don't have that. No, we had a sixth form committee. It's very democratic. And
progressive stuff.
Yeah, and then I was just the chair, and then we just did like a lot of fundraisers and it just included a lot of like talking to staff about like people are unhappy about the toilets at the moment, whatever. But here's the thing: when I was applying to uni, I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, okay, I'm interested in history and politics. How can I draw in the random stuff that I do? So I was like, I'm really interested in like how dynamics between people make decisions get made and like thinking about how historically like that has worked. So being on the sixth form committee has really made me think, and you just like lie, right? And that's what, and I did, because the other thing I did was, when I was at school, in high school, I was on the school council just because I didn't even want to be. They were just like, me and Joe Hudson, they were like, you have to be on it. And I was like, okay. So we were on it. But yeah, no, sorry, 4 days. Literally. But basically, that one time they were like, oh, who wants to be part of the Leeds Youth Council? And I was like, oh, all right, I'll check out the council. Also, because back then I was very much like politics is institutional only, which when we get to part 2 of my life, you'll see how that changes. But so yeah, I was like, okay, sick. But basically there I found out about UK Youth Parliament, and this is so funny. So I was outraged when I found out about it. I was like, I've never heard of this. Why have I never heard of this? This is undemocratic. Why do no young people know about this? So I went to my history teacher and I was like, Mr. Pierce, like, what do I do? Like, no one's heard about this. It's absolutely disgusting. Like, they say they represent us. I've never heard about this. And he was like, well, maybe you should run for it if you think. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's such a good idea. Like, we're going to cause the revolution. So like, I ran to be on the UK Youth Parliament. And like all my school, like everyone had to get involved. The whole school was involved. Like everyone, it was really funny.
To back you?
Yeah, to back me, to just vote for me. This is like
Year 12.
year 12. This is year 12.
Okay,
And anyway, the point is like that was another thing where when I came to write my personal statement, I was like, oh, I'm really interested in politics because
campaign, essentially.
fully, I ran a year-long campaign. So this is another thing that I was doing alongside thingy. So once I was on UK Youth Parliament, and you can find this.
You got the.
Yeah, I got it. But there's other. No, but there was like 6 of us. There was 6 of us in Leeds.
6 Leeds youth MPs.
Yeah. But so this is just really funny is that, so what's funny is this video is still on YouTube and I have no idea how to take it down. And it's me. My accent is so different. I sound like I'm actually from Leeds. Oh, I'll show you. No, I'm really proud of it because it's so cute. But basically in it, I'm like, basically my whole thing is that like bus prices need to be cheaper in Leeds and I will dedicate my time to this. You don't understand, I dedicate my time to that. I did like surveys around the city. I like collated I made these like proper like pamphlets with all this like data and pie charts and bar charts. Went and presented it to the council, presented it to like all the bus companies. I was like, this is not okay. Then I realised about privatisation. I was like, oh, the bus companies are actually privatised in Leeds. So like I can't just go to the council. They can't do enough. All this stuff. At the end of the year, guess what happened? Bus prices went up. I was like, ineffective, 100% ineffective. In fact, no, they were just like, we don't, who's just some random kid? Like, we're not gonna.
It's a violation.
It was a violation. But, yeah.
It's so impressive. But
now you see why I needed a list though, right? Because I was just like, I can't manage all of that. So yeah, that's but it was great because then when I was doing my personal statement, I was just like, I'm really like, I just think it's really interesting how like politics works. And I think I have my own experience in even though like, it was just like, it was like a manipulation of the truth. It was true. Yeah. No, but there are elements of truth. Yeah, but there are elements of truth. And also like the truth is that like off the paper, the truth is that my interest in history is because I'm interested in society. And my interest in society is all those things that I was doing. So that's not, it's just that doesn't sound as good as,
Wow, that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting.
So was Oxbridge at this point in your vocabulary, year 12, year 13?
So once that woman came from Cambridge, then I was like, okay, maybe I'll like go. So I went to the open day. Yeah. No, really, really way more important point is that in the April of that, so this is still year 12. So say that woman came in like November.
Okay.
Like in April, so Easter holidays, my history teacher, one of them, she was like, Suhaiymah, there's an opportunity from that same woman for two history students from our school to go on a history trip to Cambridge. And she was like, do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, of course, sounds good. And so I went, and yeah, this actually was probably the biggest impact for me because I went on and it was all just people from Leeds schools. So basically I got a very good warped impression of Cambridge. And I was like, oh, okay, like everyone's just from Leeds. Like everyone's, and I remember just thinking like, I don't feel super intimidated. Like no one's like spectacularly cleverer than me. We've all, we're all doing Russian Revolution. We all know the same stuff. And they weren't testing us on our knowledge. It was just like, they weren't being like, oh, how many kings and queens were there? So that was my big fear. My big fear the whole of year 12 and 13 was, I don't know any history though. I just find it really interesting. I love like being taught history, but I don't know. If you ask me what year something happened, I'd be like, I have no idea. But when I went on this thing, I was like, oh, they're not asking that. They were asking stuff like, what do you think would happen if, if we like, I don't know, I can't remember. They just asked, it was much more conceptual stuff.
Yeah.
And then a really important thing was that we went for the lunch on that day. And I met, I didn't know that, but like, so Dr. Ilinka Rublak, who's actually like a really sick historian, she was there. She was there, and she like happened to just be sitting opposite me. And she was like, how are you finding it? And I was like, no, it's all good. And she was like, do you think you would apply? And I was like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure. And she was just like, oh, you should definitely apply. Which in my head, I was like, oh, okay. You know what I said about the formula thing? So I was like,
she was a big historian.
No, I knew she was like cool because she'd been with us all day.
Okay.
And we've been talking about like time travel and stuff and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, she actually teaches here. She says I should apply. Obviously, she probably didn't mean like you should apply. Exactly. But I just took it to be like, wow, you've seen the light in me. Okay. So that had a big impact. And I remember going home and being like, you know what? I wasn't completely stupid compared to everyone else. The history teacher there said that I should apply. Everyone else was from Leeds and they seemed pretty normal. Like, job done, let's go. So that was quite a big, that was a big turning point, I think, actually.
How was that received by your family, by your mom?
Yeah, I think my mum was like really backing that. She was like, that would be brilliant, you know. And I remember like when I was at Cambridge, we had a conversation about this, me and a couple of other like women of colour and people whose like parents or grandparents had been immigrants. And we were just saying how like, you know, for so many people's families, Cambridge was like the ultimate goal, you know. It was like because education is so important to immigrants. And then it's like, if you've attained Oxbridge, you've like done, you know, it's done. It's like British Commonwealth done, it's dealt with, ticked off. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which obviously, like, you know, we can critique in lots of different ways now, but at the time, yeah, she was just like, this would be sick, let's do it. And I think for her, it was like, you know, that. Actually, something I would like to add is that my history teacher, Mr. Pierce, again, shout out, he said something which really, really struck me, and he said that, I remember he did an assembly in maybe 11 or 12, and he was like, the only reason to do well at GCSEs, I think it was GCSEs, the only reason to do well in your exams is to give yourself the most choice in your life, because the better that you do, the more opportunities and options you will have. And I think I really deep that, because I was like, okay, so if I want more options, I should just do better. And it wasn't, so he didn't put any pressure on that was like, so you can do this, so you can do that. He was just like, and so for me, it was like, if I go to Cambridge, I'll have loads of options, because I could, you know, and also that did play into a bit, because I didn't have any idea what I wanted to be. You know, people are like, what do you want to be? Yeah. I was like, oh, I like history. I don't know what I want to be. And so I was like, but I can kind of evade that if I go to like somewhere like Cambridge, because I come out with a Cambridge degree. So that's still going to be so many options. Rather, do you know what I mean? So that had really big impact on me, that idea of like only do your best so that you get the most choice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I think that has proven quite true, I would think.
Cool. Talk me through your experience with each of your different A levels. Like, what did you enjoy about each of them in particular?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, history. I'll start with history. I just loved history, because we did like the Russian Revolution, we did Ireland, and it was like I just love history. I love like thinking about why things happen, what motivates things, like how different causes interact and how that creates change, and also how people. My favorite types of histories were like these histories of protest and these histories of revolution, and what does it take for something to change in a society? What does it take for a moment to go a different direction than it could have gone? And so I think I just loved the thinking, and I loved that like the why and why and why, but really why. And I really loved like when you like. Because I think history was maybe the only subject where it provided the kind of option for you to go, no, I think there's a different reason, actually. Because, you know, other stuff, there's like, with geography, you can only do that to a point, and then you have to go, no, actually, this is actually just the reason. Like, you could. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I loved that about history, I think. Because, like, one of the bits of history we did was, like, quite source-based. And I thought that was so interesting, because I was like, you can actually just read something that some guy wrote in 1900s, but actually, you might get it completely wrong. You might be reading going, oh, he's saying war was really bad. But then if I tell you, actually, he wrote that in his friend's diary when they weren't looking, you'd be like, whoa, that changes everything. And I thought that was so exciting. And as someone who wrote a lot of lists, obviously, I was like, you know, what are my archives? Like, what are my... Anyway, that's stuff I'm still nerdy about. So that kind of explains that. Geography, I loved, human geography, I just loved. We were doing a lot about, like, cities and how they develop, and that kind of thing, and movement of people. And I think, actually, I would say that what I found interesting with that was thinking about, like, the movement of my own family and my family history. And because, you know, there were kind of like all these interesting ideas around, like, why people move and how that affects the world and how the world then develops. And I think this was my first time engaging with those ideas around, like, what I later, I guess, would be really interested in colonialism. And, I think at that time it was, you know, and I remember, like, one of my teachers saying something about, like, you know, it was really good that Britain kind of developed other parts of the world. And I remember that was the first time when I kind of put my hand up and I was like, I don't, you know, what about all the bad stuff that happened? And I think it was like, that was the first time where I was like able to apply my lived experience and my knowledge of my family and my life to a subject in geography. I can't remember that deeply what we did, but I remember that I always used to skip Friday period 5 because we were just in the computer room. But that's just some insight for you. But yeah, so that was geography. English. Okay, yeah. So we did. We did poetry, which was a bit. I didn't really get it. I was like, it's okay, but it's not that fun. But then I kind of was like, okay, you just kind of have to play the game, and you just kind of have to be like, this is what this like is evoking. Da da da. But then we read some. I don't know. We read some cool stuff. We read some plays and stuff. And I think what I preferred about English was mainly just like I love to read, as I say with the Matilda being my favorite film. But I think the teacher made it really good because he was just very much like, whatever you read, you can interpret it however you want.
Right.
I think that's something that that you can see how that overlaps with history, how that overlaps with... So for me, they all spoke to each other. And actually, in English, we were reading a play that was set in Ireland in the 1920s, and in history, we were studying Ireland in the 1920s. So I think it was just like this interesting thing of like, okay, so cultural production is a product of political and historical moments, which is kind of what is really applicable to my life now and the things that I do. So I can see how that was of interest to me. And then we had to do general studies with nothing.
So walk me through your Cambridge application in particular. What were the interviews like?
Okay, the interviews, yeah. So I had 2 interviews in one day. So basically, I had to come down from Leeds, and just to rewind a little bit, because like my school was quite unsure. We didn't really know what to expect. So I wrote my personal statement. I also had to submit an essay that I had done at school. So I submitted one about about Germany in World War II. And then my history teacher and the careers advisor at my school like did a mock interview with me that was so hard and like really like scary because it was just like they were really pushing me, asking me all sorts of things. The real interview, way more chilled out. So I arrived at Cambridge, walked over to Queen's College, went in.
Wait, before you go in,
Whoa.
do you want to touch on quickly about your reasoning behind choosing Queen's as a college?
Oh yeah. Bit random, really. I came on the open day, and I was just walking around with my mom. We were looking at different ones. It's like I'm not really seeing any. Like they all look fine, good, nice. And then Queen's, we came into the last, and I really liked that it was on the river. I was like, oh, that's really nice. I love rivers. And then when I looked in, I remember actually I asked. I think by that time, when I was doing my application, then actually this is really important. So I wrote my personal statement, and I was like, sick, done. And then my history teacher was like, oh, do you know what, Suhaiymah, I got in touch with the guy who got into Cambridge the year above you, or like 2 years ago, or into Oxford, but he'd done history and politics or something like that. It was quite similar, luckily. And she was like, do you want to just have a look at his personal statement? Looked at it, was like, need to scrap my entire personal statement. Mine was complete, because I was out here like, my name is Suhaiymah Manzoor-Khan. It was like it was random. It was like I hadn't got like that. You just need to be like this is personal to me. Like this is what I'm doing. So I got very passionate about writing personal statements after that, and I like went into my school so much to be like, right, this is how you write them. But like, yeah, and I remember I got from the library. Because I was like, I'm not going to buy this. Got from the library 100 best personal statements or something. Read them and I was like, okay, like this is completely different. So it was actually, to be honest, like the careers advising, like PSHC personal statements that we wrote, mine was rubbish because it was, it wasn't, and I could see them when I could see my friends writing them. I was like, we need to like reword this because this is not what you want to do. So anyway, to go back to your question, which was... College, yeah. And then so that same teacher or somebody else who'd been was like, oh, here's some advice. Just go somewhere where like make sure you have like hobs in the kitchen if that's important to you. Okay. And I make porridge, so I was like, that's important to me. And something else just about like I can't remember. Just like do you want your own bathroom? Something. It was something to do like just think about that. And 3 years on-site accommodation. Or like would you want to move out? So I was like, okay, Queen's has 3 years on-site. That's good. It's big. You can go to like you can make your own food and you can go to the hall. You don't have to like you can So yeah, it wasn't really like deeply thought out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But retrospectively, kind of like looking back at it now, how important would you say it is to choose kind of to spend time choosing the college, like based on your experience and based on the experiences of your friends at Cambridge as well? I
don't think it's that important. Cool. I think it's like it is. You're still gonna have the experience that you make of it. Mm-hmm. I think. Cool. Okay, interview. Okay, yeah. So first interview was me and the history no, not the history DOS, two history fellows at Queen's. They're quite friendly, you know. It's a bit kind of like good cop, bad cop. Like one of them was quite silent, didn't say anything. The other one was like quite talkative and friendly. There was like a timer on the table. It was like 20 minutes. I was like, sick, we just got 20 minutes. That's fine. So they started off really easy. You know, they were like, oh, so what are you studying in history? I was like, told them. You know, so we read your essay. You said this, you know, like, why do you think that? And it's something I already said the reason in the essay. So that was sort of just like telling them that, you know, this is why. And then they asked me, so you're writing like a coursework about the Suez crisis. You know, what do you think the cause of that was? And so I was like, that's, again, stuff that I, you know and have an opinion about. And then somehow we got talking about like World War One and something, he said something along the lines of like, what do you think would have motivated men to fight in World War One? And this was where I just felt, this was really interesting because I was like, oh, this is rogue. And I was like, you know, maybe just like patriotism. And he was like, yes. Great. And like what else, like he was really encouraging, and he was like, anything else? And he was like, anything else? And I was like, and he was like, you know, like what about? And he was kind of like giving me these like leading. He was like, what about, you know, do you think like if you're a man, like what do you think? And I was like, oh, maybe like masculinity and like what it takes to be like a British citizen man. And he was like, yeah, really good. So I just felt really guided and like very encouraged, and like they weren't challenging me in any big way. And I just felt that they basically were quite on my side in the sense that, and I had felt this in the, you know, when you do the extra application thing after your personal statement for Cambridge, like SAQ, and I knew that because we had gone to Churchill for the open day and had a chat with this admissions person, and they were just like, you know, if you go to a state school and you have bigger classes and stuff, that all gets taken into account, and that really helps your application because, you know, if you're getting like 3 A stars at A level from a school where you had 30 people in your class and you whatever, I felt at least in the interview that they were already on my side a bit, and they were just like, we're not going to grill you like we were going to grill, you know, someone who went to Eton. Because we already understand that you've kind of proven yourself in situations. So that was nice. And then the second interview was with the DOS, my future DOS.
What's a DOS, just for people that don't know?
Oh, yeah, Director of Studies. I almost forgot, that felt like a test. So he kind of was just like, you know, he's like, you go talk to him if anything's going wrong with history. He would always be like, what papers do you want to do, da-da-da. Yeah. So that was, this was like a 2-sofa situation. This was different. It was like, we're not at a table anymore. So actually first he was like, here's some sources, go read them. You have 20 minutes and then come back and we'll talk about them. So I was like, okay. So it was like 3 sources. So like, I didn't understand the context at all. It was clearly about some king at some time. And like, you know, I said to you, this was my big fear, that I don't know kings, I don't know times, I don't know years. So I was like, okay. And it was like, one seemed like a diary entry, one seemed like more of like a textbook, one was something else. So I just read them, made some notes, kind of just like I would have in history A level, like, you know, who said it, where, when, why, what can we like find, like, you know, comprehension, basically just like, what's the implications? Went back in and he was like, okay, so like, you know, what do you think? Just very easy, you know, like what do you think was going on here? So I'm like, okay, so obviously a king seems to have been like, there were some rumors about him or something. And then he's like pushing me, and we just had quite a straightforward conversation about what did you think? What did you find? And then after that, he was kind of like more generally, he was like, you know, do you have any questions about doing history here? You know, like what kind of papers would you be interested in studying, or like what kind of area of history? No, he said why do you want to study history? I remember that was one question I was like prepped for. And I just realized now in hindsight it must have been so generic what I said, but it felt so like, you know, this is the one. And I was just like, I just want to understand the world that I live in. I was just like, you know, I watch the news and I don't understand it, and I just want to be able to know, like, how do we end up here? Yeah. Which was just true, and it's still true. Was that the same for you?
I didn't have that particular question.
Did you not? Was your interviews different?
It was very similar, but like just different order, I think. But then, do you remember that paragraph I sent you?
Yeah. So that was so cute.
Yeah, she knows about. I asked a question to my.
No, say it. It's funny.
You know about it as well. Remember?
The listeners don't know.
Yeah, long story short, so I asked a question to the two interviewers about whether history was cyclical.
I can't believe you asked like a proper question.
Yeah. I mean, I was advised to definitely ask a question because
Really?
it shows that you're kind of, it shows that you're interested
Really?
and eager.
I was like, no.
Did you ask a question?
I was like, no, I have no questions.
So yeah, I asked that question and they seemed to get really engaged, and we ended up, the interview lasted like an extra 10-15
Wow.
minutes, which was for me a good sign.
That is a good sign. Okay.
And yeah, then I bounced out of that and I was like, cool, let's move to the next one.
Interesting.
I asked the question. I had a couple of interviews. One, I asked the question, and I think all of them. One of them, I asked the question, and he was like, "Do you think we have time for that, or something like that?"
Oh my god! Really? Oh my god!
Like, do you think you should ask me that?
Oh my god! Just shut that down. Oof. See, I think that would have crushed me if I had had like a. But I remember after the interviews though, the DOS, he came into the room where everyone was waiting and he was like, I just want to say, you know, don't worry about how everything's gone today, and however you're feeling it probably went the opposite. And I was like, but I thought it went okay, and then I was like, oh no. He was obviously saying to reassure. But yeah.
Cool. I mean, so yeah, I mean the question is, after your interview, like, how do you feel like it went? Were you kind of...
I felt like I'd done my best, which, as we know, historically is all that matters. I was like, you know, I gave what I could, I said what I said, and yeah, I was like, I couldn't really tell. I was like, I don't know if I would have got that or not. Like, it seemed a bit too easy, because as I said, the one my history teacher did was so hard. So I was this seems a bit too easy, but, you know, let's see. And I think I was much more like, it is what it is. I say that, but then when it came to the day before results day, I was like, if I get my second option, I'm not going. I was like, no. I was just like, because my second option was Durham, and then I'd gone to the open and I was like,
why did you choose Durham?
Because it was the joint humanities course, and I really liked it. It was for the course, not the uni, to be honest, because the only place in the country that did like no specific humanity. But then I remember just being like, I don't want to go there, and I was just like, well, I'll just take a gap year and reapply, because my other places were Nottingham, UCL, and York. Which, would have all been fine.
Well, are you the type of person that when you get into you have a look around the place and you take all in, or you kind of something like, I don't want to look around because what if I get it or don't get it? And then I'll probably see it if I get in.
I don't know, because I remember on the open day I had already come and looked a bit around Queens. So I wasn't too like, I think my mind wasn't there. I think I was more just like, get the interview done. Also got to get the train back to Leeds. I don't have time for looking around.
Did you have a look around or you just keep it moving?
For me, I came the day before, so I slept over the night because I didn't want to be late.
Wow.
So I came, slept over, had my interview 1 in the morning, mid-morning, and then one right in the evening as well. So it was kind of spread apart well. And I didn't speak to anyone. I just basically kept to myself.
Same.
Looked at my personal statement hundreds of times. Read the essay that I sent in hundreds of times. I just knew kind of how I was going to approach the source question, because I knew that I need to expect that. So I didn't speak to anyone, and I wasn't looking to speak to anyone because
it's not the time. Did you look around though? Is this what you mean? Did you know?
Okay. I got given a tour by.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't want to go on this tour.
Got bigger fish to fry. Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. So talk us through offer holder day. So when you found out that you got accepted into Cambridge, like what was the kind of emotions that you felt? How did your family react?
Yeah. So I actually remember this. So like, I got up on results day, and then I went straight on UCAS. So I was like, maybe, you don't know. And immediately it was just like, you were happy to announce, congratulations or something, whatever. You got a place to study at Cambridge University. And obviously I didn't know my grades, but I knew I'd got in. So I was just like, oh, sick. And I did that thing, you like can't stop smiling, but you're still a bit like, oh. And then went downstairs and... No, because do you know what? Because I think actually what was maybe more big was when I got the offer.
Yeah, that's what I meant, really. That's what I meant.
Oh, sorry, I'm lying, That was way bigger because I was like, did I know we were going to get them? Did you know the day?
Did you get a letter or email?
Letter.
Okay, I got an email, so that's different.
Oh, okay, no, so I think I had a feel, I think we knew it was around then. And then I remember there's a letter through the door and it said like University of Cambridge, whatever, so I was like, oh, okay. And I was just like, you know what, okay, bismillah, that's fine, let's just see. And then I was just like, congratulations, we're happy to whatever. And exact same experience of what I just described, really, so it didn't really make a difference. But I remember, and then I went and showed my mum, And she burst into tears, and I was like, oh, because I wasn't feeling it that deep. Do you know what I mean? And she was feeling it really deep. So I was like, oh, she was just like, this is amazing. Like, you've done so well. And I was like, oh,
How did that make you feel?
I was like, oh, sick. And also, I think like making my mum proud is like, that's up there. That's up there on my list of things. So, so that was pretty good. I was like, oh, that's gone well. And I knew also that she was like, because we'd been very like not really told anyone that I'd applied, like in the wider family, just because I just felt like quite a big pressure then. And so then I think she was just like, oh, you know, like she really wanted to tell my grandparents, and I was like, oh, I don't know, because what if I don't get in? I'll be a bit awkward. So then she like, I think she was kind of sitting on this this information, but yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah, I mean.
So then the period between offer day and results day.
Yeah.
So what was your mindset then? Were you kind
So
of
I think
a lot of pressure?
I think the offer was that I needed to get A-star AA.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah. And I think I felt it didn't feel super impossible. And I think from mocks and stuff, I was like, I'm capable of getting an A-star. And I just needed to like, you know, follow the formula. So I was like, I just need to like do it.
It'll be in the description below.
So yeah, but I was still like, ooh, you know, you can't guarantee it. So it was, it definitely, and I think it was the time where I felt there was the most resting on an exam. You know, it wasn't just like, it'd be good if I got an A-star. It was like, no, you actually need to get an A-star. Yeah.
Cool. So there's a little clap. Basically, when I clap, it means that we might cut this bit out. What I'm about to say. So I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking, should we go into more kind of practical advice about preparing for A-level exams if you think that would be beneficial? If you feel that
I feel like people who might be nearer to doing it might have better memory than me.
Okay.
My only thing is that I just feel a bit like that was long. That was
so
like,
let's go straight to Cambridge then.
Like 5 years ago.
Go straight to Cambridge. Come. So
we'll probably just ask you like,
expectations.
What were your expectations, and what was the reality, and how was your academic experience, and how was your social experience, and how was your extracurricular.
Okay.
But you just take it where you want it, and we'll go off of that.
Okay.
Come. Okay, so you've talked us through your A-level experience, and you've talked us through your interview process, and you've received your offer, you've got the grades you needed to go to Cambridge. What were your expectations and kind of apprehensions possibly before coming to Cambridge in October?
Yeah, I think, oh my God, I just didn't really know what to expect. I really didn't know what to expect. I was like, you know, how can you know? Like, it's nothing like school. It's nothing like sixth form. I've never stayed away from home on my own, just been left in some place for like 8 weeks. And obviously it's far from Leeds as well. It's not just like up the road. So I was like, okay, this is, I don't know. I genuinely just didn't know. And I felt quite like, oh God, I hate, like I did, and this has changed a lot now, but at that time I did not see myself as a sociable person. I was like, I hate social situations so like deeply, viscerally, like just like, oh, I was like, please don't make me talk to people. And I was like, I know if this, at least for like a long time. And it also was just like, I'd already like decided, I was like, for the first month, no one will be themselves. So I'll just have to like chat to people who won't even be being themselves. And then after a month, they'll finally, so I don't know, I had a lot of like, I think I was trying to protect myself a bit as well and just be like, you know, it's fine if you don't make friends in the first month anyways, you know, But yeah, probably, I think, quite nervous, but in a way where you don't actually know what you're nervous about because you don't know what's going to happen.
A lot of uncertainty.
So much uncertainty, yeah.
Cool. So let's go this chronologically. So you had 3 years, your course of 3 years. So let's go first year. So how would you describe your kind of social life and kind of integration within the college and university system in your first year?
Yeah, so I think I'm a good example of like if you don't have a good first year, because I like that first term was so hard. Like I really like I was like crying a lot most days, like just like this is really horrible. Like I just feel like I've not made any friends. I feel like no one really likes me, no one's really like talking to me. I don't really like, the work is really interesting. And so that was the way in my brain that I worked it. I was like, you know, like I've never learned this much stuff in one time. And like, but on the other hand, you know what I was saying about like feeling like you got to do your best. This guy's giving me 17 books to read. I didn't know you're not actually, I was like, how am I going to read 17 books? That's so hard. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just stay in the library all the time. So that first time I was just like, literally when my family came to visit me, I was like, guys, like, I need to be in the library. Like, I can't be seeing you right now. And I was like so stressed. Yeah. Because I was like, how can I write a full essay like every week? And, you know, I just felt that, to be honest with you, I felt there was no real support for like, especially for the fact that like, you know, I think some of the more confident, private educated boys on my course were much more chilled out, and they were like, you know, oh, come on, Sam, you don't need to like be in the library every single day. But I was like, well, I've got to go to all my lectures, and I've got to do, and I just thought you had to do every single thing. And then on top of that, you know, I hated Freshers Week, and it was like this having to bond, and everyone's drinking, and I'm not drinking, and like everyone's not just drinking, but like they're drinking for the first time in their lives. So they're just like vomiting. They're like all over the place. And I'm like, this is fun. Yeah. Like just watching you. Yeah. And yeah, just being like, everything just being like, this is fake. I remember I rang my mum and I was like, you know how everyone says they make their like best friends for life at uni? I was like, I'm not. I can tell you today, these are not my friends for life. And I think I would say there was one person that I considered loosely a friend. I wouldn't have even said like friend confirmed.
Is this in first?
This is first term. Sorry, I'm going to skip ahead. But I just think the first term's quite important because it was quite like scarring, and it was quite like. No, it was really scarring. It was very like. It was really horrible, and I think, you know, and actually one of the girls who I really liked, she dropped out after the first week. She was like, I'm done. She was like, this is no good. And they'd said to us, no one drops out at Cambridge. They were like, no, the dropout rate's really low.
I know of someone, but not personally.
Because the thing they do is that like a lot of people just intermit for a year, so they'll take the year out instead. But she was like, I'm here and I know I don't want to be here. And I was like, but then I knew when she did that, I was like, I don't think I want to drop out. I don't feel that. I just feel like, and I think I'm generally like the kind of person who just takes a long time to settle into new situations. Like even just like if you take me to like, I don't know, like a gathering, I'll just be like, okay, give me like an hour just to like assess who everyone is, what's going on. And then, so now imagine that's on like a life scale. Also just felt like, I don't know, like as I said, I was really close to my mom and like my family, and I was just like, well, everyone's just abandoned me. Like, what is this? Like, I'm just on my own. And I'm like trying to ring them, and also trying to, you know, I would prioritize like ringing my mom than like going down to the bar and hanging out with everyone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was only, I think, really the only reason I socialized was that I would walk to lectures with a couple of the other historians, and then I would go to the, what was it called? Where you eat?
JCR?
Buttery. Yeah. I forgot what it was called. Buttery. And like have food with people. And then I was like, okay. But I didn't really, you know, it was just like, it was that first year kind of polite, you know, chat.
What about societies? Did you try to get involved
in so I was like, societies, this will be the way.
Right.
Oh my God. But the thing is, like, because I didn't really properly do Freshers' Fair, and so, which is another story. But basically, I think I missed out on kind of getting involved with stuff, and then I felt a bit too shy to like go along to something for the first time on my own. I went to like a knitting society at Queen's, where everyone was nice, but I was just like, I don't think this is my crowd. Like everyone was already friends. Would I even go? I just feel like I just didn't, because I was so, you don't understand, I was so, and like I can say it now because it's like, oh, it's funny, I'm not like that anymore, but there are definitely other 18-year-olds out there, but like just so socially awkward and stressed about like, I wasn't awkward, I didn't come across awkward, but I felt like I was so awkward. And I was like, the idea of having to go something on my own where no one knows me, where I'm going to have to prove so much about myself, just weighed really heavily on me. And I felt like, you know, even in the first week, I remember there was some people having this conversation in Old Hall about like, they were like, oh, EDL, Tommy Robinson, it's really bad, And I remember just thinking, okay, I should have an opinion, because obviously I am Muslim. So like, you know, I'm the ones that they hate. So, okay, like say something. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. But like, I don't want to talk to these people. I just remember this really vividly, because I was like, but then they'll think I'm really stupid. Oh my God, no. But then, and it was like, so I just think there were all these extra pressures, and just being like, yeah, I don't know. It was really hard. And I don't know, people would just say random stuff. Like they would either just ignore me, which was quite like, you know, common, or they would be like, oh my God, your headscarf is beautiful. And I'll be like, why are you acting like you've never met? Because I was thinking, coming from my school as well, I was just like, oh, I didn't know that I was like something. I think it was a real transition to like, oh, they're not just seeing Suhaiymah. Like they're not seeing like, you know, because I was like chair of sixth form, so it was like everyone, it was like, oh, Suhaiymah, you know, and you know everyone. And then it was like the situation where no one knows you, and they don't even care really who you are. They're more just like, oh, do you have any opinions about Palestine? And you're like, wow, so you're seeing me and you're going straight to, okay. So that was really hard, if I'm honest. But then by the end of first year, basically quite roguely, I forced myself to go on, because I knew by the end of the first term, I was like, look, I'm going to have to do something drastic to make friends. Like, I'm going to have to make them. So there was like a ski trip that was £300. And so I was like, I've never been skiing. I'm never going to go skiing for £300. I'm just going to go. And
Is it the varsity one?
No, it was like Queen's College ski trip.
Okay, cool.
And I had enough of like, I knew the people, and I was like, I'll just share a room with her. And also because it was like I only knew one girl, like who I would count as like a loose friend, and I just felt like I wanted to have like some proper friends who were girls. And so I was like, we're going to be sharing a room for like 5 days. We're gonna make them be my friends. And I think that did make a difference. And it was good. And I had a good time. And I did feel a bit more like I had a group of people. And it was just the other historians mainly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say it was only by the end of first year that I felt like I had some friends, maybe 3. Don't tell them that. I did actually say that these 2 girls in Butterby, I was like, yeah, I would say I have about 2 friends. And they were like, yeah. And they were like, what about us? And I was like, no, obviously I see you as like acquainted. But yeah, so that's just my way of thinking. That's like a bit messed up. But yeah, by the end of first year, I felt a bit more like, I don't have to work all the time. Got it. Like you just kind of like, and I made sure I would always have my weekend off. I never worked on Saturday and Sunday, or never worked on the day when I had my supervision and the day after it. And I sort of was just like, I have to read everything. And, as I had more supervisions, I was like, okay, it's more about the argument that I'm making. It's not about how much I've read. And, actually first year, the supervisions were really good, really interesting. And my supervisor was really invested in me and really like, kind of like making me think in all these challenging ways. And I remember saying, in one term, I felt like I'd learnt more than in a whole A level. Mm-hmm. And so that side of it was like really like, okay, cool. And I did love it. It was modern British history, which was like so what I loved. So that was all really good. And then obviously as the weather got better as well, I just was like, this is great.
That's what you do as well.
Yeah.
Would you say the same thing? You learn more in 1 year than you learn in 1 year?
Yeah, definitely.
One
she said
term.
One term. And I agree.
Yeah.
Really? I agree.
Yeah, because you're reading so much, aren't you? You do like we did 100 years in 8 weeks.
Yeah, 8 massive topics in 8 weeks.
Why did you not? What do you? I guess it's not equivalent, but like.
I don't know if I've learned. I think I learned a lot. Like my learning curve in A-level, I think, was the highest.
Really?
Probably because I don't know. Yeah, just because the content, because I did philosophy A-level. I think the content I had a background in a lot of it.
Okay, that's interesting.
So,
so you already
that
had
was the foundation, and that was where I was like going from nothing to
True.
Okay, I feel like for me this year, for the majority of the courses, it's like, okay, I see why that means that. And
True.
It's kind of like
Okay.
like
Interesting.
filling in the gaps.
Interesting.
So that's why I found what you said really interesting.
Yeah, but I remember saying that really vivid, and like I would say it to loads of people. But I've learned more in a term. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was first year, kind of.
First year,
Yeah.
on the wrap. So let's move on to second year. Maybe the story is a bit
This
more
one's
optimistic.
it's much more. This is like second year life changes, and it all starts in Freshers Week. So I'm standing at a stall. So basically, this time I actually go to Freshers Fair properly, which makes a big difference because I bump into this girl who's like, "Oh, hey, have you heard of this thing called Fly?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, it's for women of color." She's this black girl, and so she's like, I'm like, "I see you," and she's like, "Oh, it's for women of color," because it's not men. So I'm like, and she's like, yeah, this thing called Fly is for women of color. And I was like, okay, like I'm kind of interested in feminism and stuff, so that sounds interesting. And so she took us to, she told me to come. And to be honest, the same thing as what I was saying first year, I was like, I'm going to go on my own. Like I had all that stuff of like, oh no, maybe I just won't go. Thank God I went. And it basically it's a society essentially, but it was just like, 5 girls, but all for the first time, like, because the thing is, I didn't really do any PACSOC stuff. I didn't really do any ISOC stuff, all of that in first year, which I think a lot of people like meet other people of color and that kind of thing. But because I was like, I have to be in the library by 9 a.m. Like, how can I? So I just didn't do any society stuff. So I went to this Fly meeting, and it was like the first time that I'd just been surrounded by like other people who were having the exact same experience as me. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, I don't know what even, and I just will never forget like the feeling when I was walking back from Cafe Nero that day. I was just like, my heart was like properly pounding in my chest. And I was just like, oh my God, like it's not going to be like it was last year, and it doesn't have to be. And I just felt something shift. And and then these girls were like, come to this other stuff, come to like Women's Forum. And basically what I realized and what happened through that year was that, like this is the university experience I want to have. It's not going to be like, oh, let's get drunk every day, and it's not going to be like, let's do knitting society or let's do loads of sports. Because also, in first year, I've got to say, like, first term, I just like did rowing at all the first term, and I was like, I guess that's what you have to do. Yeah, but like just to enjoy it, exactly, literally. So this was like completely, different, and so it just opened all these new things and new conversations and I was meeting all these, because also there was obviously the older year girls, and they were like say these things, and I was like, what, like, are you saying that what we're experiencing is structural racism? And I was like, this is insane. And they'd be like, being a woman of color is obviously different to being a woman or just being like a man of color. And I was like, that's so true. I had never thought about it like that. That's so true. And they'd be like, as Toni Morrison says, as Audre Lorde says. And I was like, okay. And like, I remember Christmas of first year, I went to the English faculty library and I just took out all the like Audre Lorde, Patricia Hill Collins, bell hooks, and I was like, like, forget reading history this term, like I'm reading these books. And and like Christmas, I had the best. I just read all these books and I was like, I just remember feeling so like
enlightened.
Oh my God, like my life experiences I wasn't just sad for no reason last year. It was like, people weren't just ignoring me because I was boring. I wasn't socially awkward because I'm weird. It's like I had an embodied knowledge of like how race and gender were being played out on me and how everyone was viewing me, and like that made it really feel really difficult to do things. So it was really, really eye-opening. And the other big thing for me was that the girls at Fly were like, let's start a blog. And we'll just write stuff because, like we thought that was a really good way to raise we felt very aware that other people didn't know what our experiences were. And I didn't know how much I was going to love writing for this blog. And I was like, let me submit another one this week, guys. And I was just literally. And so then after doing quite a few, and then we would write for like the Cambridge Student and stuff, and, just little things about, our experiences and just like, people don't know necessarily. And I think a lot of people in first year go through that, like, oh, wow, I never... but then basically I just realized I was just writing so many blogs that I was like, I'm just going to start my own blog. Sorry, guys. And so I did, and I started this like anonymous blog, which was obviously not, because it wasn't associated with my name, but it was called The Brown Hijabi, which I thought was really funny because I was like, obviously there is only one brown hijabi in Queen's College, so they'll know who it is. Yeah, so it was like, oh, who could it be? And I just started writing like about different things. I think one of the first posts was about like, it was more like a kind of journalistic angle, and it was like, why is depression such a big issue at Cambridge? Because the other really big thing actually about second year was that even whilst all this amazing stuff was being found out, I was actually really depressed in first term. And I say that because I associate first year much more with like the stress and this like sadness and loneliness. But I think in second year I was just experiencing like a different thing, which was like I think it was associated a lot with one of my best friends was really depressed, and I think that had like weighed quite heavily on me in ways that I didn't really recognize. But an outcome of that was that it was like writing was this outlet then to be like, okay.
Have you ever used writing as an outlet in the past, like before you came to university? Did you ever keep like a journal or anything like that?
Yeah, obviously I kept journals. So I was like, but I would never share it. Okay, so that was the big difference, was being like, you guys don't know what my experience is. You're going to have to read it. And, and it was like so exciting. Cause I remember I did this first time, because I went to this like women's campaign event or something. And it was but basically it wasn't about this at all. But some guy in the audience was like, I think the bigger issue is, why are women in the Middle East covering up? And I was like, and I felt so visible because I was just like, okay, brilliant. Like, should I? And I remember I went back and I was just really upset about it. And I was like, oh, what can I do? But then because I've been writing all these fly blogs and stuff, I was like, well, a thing that I know makes me feel better, it might not do anything else, is just if I write. So I just wrote this Facebook post and just being like, oh, I hate when people ask about why I wear hijab. Like, let me just tell you from my point of view, like, what's going on. I would never write something like that now because I'm like, I shouldn't have to explain myself to anyone. But at the time it was so crazy, because what was crazy was that everyone in college was like, wow, like I read that and it was so interesting, and I never knew. And it kind of opened this thing where it was like, the thing that had made everyone be so weird towards me was the thing that now I had been like, oh my God, here's the thing, like deal with it. And
how long did it take for someone to kind of come up to you and say, I've read
like immediately
this?
that evening when I went to Buttery,
wow.
like, yeah, like people.
You posted on Facebook? Like, how did it get out there?
Yeah, I posted on Facebook. Yeah. But it was just a Facebook status. Yeah. But it was like, for me, it was very impactful. Yeah. And then I started my blog and I started writing, and I started going to loads more like, so then there was like the BME events that I would go to, Fly events, Women's Campaign, and we would start running our own events, and that was really cool as well, because it was like, oh, and then I realized like at uni, I guess, what you can do is you can just do your own thing. You don't have to just go to things. Because, you know, when I was like, well, there's no societies out there that I'm seeing, I was like, well, let's just run the events we want to see. So let's do.
So were you on a committee then? Did you apply to be on a
Not a committee, but in Fly it was just very like, because there's only a few of us, it was just like, let's do a thing. And it was like, everyone was having conversations about, you know, cultural appropriation. And I was like, let's talk about that, because I think, you know, these people wearing bindis, they don't know. So let's just tell them. And yeah, it came from a very like educational point of view. And like, we'll just tell them, we'll raise consciousness, and we'll explain, and we'll write, and we'll all of that. And it meant that I made friends much more kind of a kind where it was not about just the fact that we lived together or we studied the same subject, but like we really had shared interests and passions. And that ran all the way. I would say second and third year I can really like just tie together in that way, that it was all the way through then. And I had my college friends and I had quite a good group, but really like where I found my passion.
You've spoken about how that realization period when you met you said you bumped into a black girl at Precious Fair, said come to fly and da. But speak a little bit about, I suppose, the other side of that. Like, what do you think that representation means to when at university, seeing people that are like you? Because it seems that was the turning point.
Yeah. It's a good question, because I think I don't think it was something I would have thought about consciously, and at the time I wouldn't have said, oh, representation really matters. But I think that it was almost more the representation of like a similar experience, because it wasn't that, because, you know, there was a black girl doing history in my college on my course, but like we didn't necessarily we weren't really close or anything, and it didn't feel like, and we never talked about like what it meant to be a person of color. But I think the difference was that it was the representation of my experience. So when I went to that cafe, you know, this girl was like, and the premise was we're together because we're women of color. That's completely different than someone saying, let's get together. Oh, you have to be a person of color. Oh, okay, cool, interesting. It was like, that's the premise. And then the conversation was like, oh my God, you know, it was really hard this week because, you know, my supervisor said to me like, oh, wow, your braids look so cool. And I was just like, oh, I wish I had said that. And it was like, immediately we were talking about these things that it was like, oh, they're the things that I didn't realize that I was sort of not mentioning, and I was being quite silent about. And if I compare first year with the other 2 years, you know, first year, like, I never said I was going to pray. I always said, oh, I'm just going to pop out. And I was not, you know, I never would order halal. I'd be like, I'm just going to eat vegetarian. And I was like really downplaying like anything that might identify me as too different, too other. And I think, you know, the reason I wouldn't have spoken to someone like the girl who just did history in my degree, who was also who was a person of color, was, you know, I think almost that like neither of us wanted to mark ourselves out as too different. But I think it was like, you know, because it was kind of like, that's how I'll preserve myself, and that's how I will remain safe, is that people just don't know. Yeah. But the big plot twist was that they all knew because they could just see me.
I was watching a skit. I think her name is Miss Jocelyn.
Okay.
But she used to do like BBC skits. I just saw her on YouTube randomly the other day, and this like black teenage girl walks into the GP clinic or whatever, and the receptionist is a black lady. And then she says something about, like, she mentions the fact that she's black, and then the receptionist is like, what are you talking about? I'm not black. Don't try out me. Or like,
yeah.
Just kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. No, 100%. I would say there was a lot of, like, internalized racism that I had coming in and, like, being there, and or just, like, you know, and silencing myself, really. And so that's why I think it was just so revolutionary to share what I was writing, because it was like, oh, I am different, and that, you know, deal with it, and then realizing that difference isn't just difference, but it's like structured, and I'm disadvantaged because of that difference, and I'm treated in you know, unjust ways because of that difference, and, you know, for like that one kernel of an idea turned into like a whole kind of like theorization.
I feel like that's kind of a theme in that when people are like, when you come from secondary school, that you are known as the personality and character that you are first and foremost, and then all of the other, like wearing hijab, all those things kind of filter away, versus, and then coming to Cambridge where it's like you're known first and foremost for what you look like, and then the character, if you're able to get past that, then that will kind of come through. And I feel like a lot of that's like a theme for a lot of people, in that's what the Cambridge experience. Because I remember I was speaking to someone not too long ago, and they said one thing that Cambridge made them aware of is that, like, how society, how the place you're raised in, whatever, if it's diverse, you almost feel like that's the norm. Like,
100%, yeah.
To the open day with all the people from Egypt, you thought, okay, this is just what
exactly
people are like, and then you're faced with something completely different, and you have to sort of navigate that.
Definitely, and just and also like that, at school you're used to like, probably on top of that is the fact that lots of people do look more like you. So you're just like, no, you can't go around being like, oh, Suhaiymah's the brown hijabi, because you'd be like, which one? Like, but yeah.
How did your passion for spoken word come about?
Oh, so basically, so in that second year as well, in that first term, so like I say, I was quite depressed, and I was seeing the college nurse, Myri, shout out Myri, she was actually a legend, and
She's still at Queen's.
No, she left, but she basically was just like, she was like, you know what, you sound like, she was like, when's the last time you felt like you were just like loving life? And I was like, sixth form. And she was like, what was going on at sixth form? And I was like, you don't understand, I was so busy, Myri, like I was doing this. And she was like, okay, and what would you say you're doing now? And I was like, history. And she was like, okay. She was like, what we need to do is like, we need to get you doing more of the stuff that you love. So she was like, what's something that you've never, that you would love to do but you've never done, or you don't think you can do? And I was like, oh, I love watching like slam poetry on YouTube, but like obviously I'm not going to do that. And she was like, leave it with me. A couple of days later, I come to my pigeonhole, my little like letterbox, and she's put in this like open mic night leaflet.
Mary changed the game.
Yeah, literally.
That's crazy, man.
And so she was just like, you don't have to tell anyone you're going, you don't have to go with anyone, just go. And you have to perform a poem. So I was like, okay. I didn't tell anyone, signed up to the open mic, went on my own, wrote a poem especially, and performed it, and like came second in the slam. And I was like,
wow.
Oh my God, I'm gonna get this. Is cool.
Can you remember a line from the poem?
Yeah, it was like brown, Muslim, woman. It was like all about like, oh, I'm boxed in all these categories. It was like very much what we were just saying, it was like, and it is such a good reflection of what I was just understanding for the first time. And it was like, I will never be just a comedian or a writer. I will be the brown Muslim writer who is a woman, and etc. And yeah.
That was sick.
No, so yes, that was, so yeah, and then that was.
Did that become like another outlet for you?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, Myri was right, because then like, look at second year compared to first year, I was doing like Fly, BME, women's campaign, spoken word, writing my blog. Like it was busy. And I was not busy with just random things like rowing. It was busy with the things that I was like, I found really like integral to my experience,
So, okay, looking back at Cambridge as a 3 years, because you kind of tied the second and third year together. I don't know if you can really pinpoint one thing, but like, what do you cherish most about your time at Cambridge? And then we'll kind of look at the other side afterwards.
Cherish? That's a good question. What do I cherish the most? That's a weird.
Cherish.
Cherish.
Shows that was very, very, very.
I know, that's interesting. I don't really know what cherishing is, but I think that I am.
Would you want me to use a different word?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah. So what do you?
Like,
I really wanted to use that word, but
look back at like most fondly, or not? Is that what are you going to get at?
Yeah, essentially about how it kind of changed you for the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on then.
Okay. How it changed for the better? Yeah. Well, I think 2 ways. Both kind of indirect and less obvious. So one way is that I think it was the place that, because of feeling such a level of like hypervisibility and being silencing myself and all this kind of burden of stuff, it facilitated me kind of becoming like, I have to be outspoken, and I deserve to stand up for myself, and I deserve to say what matters. And I think that has irreversibly shaped me. And I think experiencing it in such a young and vulnerable age, like when you're so on your own, really just, I do think that's like really shaped a core part of me, which is like, you just got to find your people and you've got to stand up for what is right, and it's going to work out in the end kind of thing. So I think in that way, like Cambridge, I do think if I had gone to somewhere like a lot of my friends, like Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, whatever, where there was a lot more people who had a similar background to me, had similar experiences to me, I wonder if I would have felt the need to be so outspoken, felt the need to so like, state what I felt was important and let people know and raise consciousness, or if I'd have been like, most people know, it's cool, it's fine. Yeah. So I do think that was a big impact. And I think the other impact was that, I learned the game basically, right? Like doing the history degree and like the supervisions and stuff. I feel like I felt like I cracked a code, I was like, okay. So like, because my first year, I revised really hard. Like I did my whole formulaic thing, right? I revised really hard for prelims, and I got like a low 2-1. And I was like, oh, but okay, what like that? I thought that this didn't live up to what everyone said I was gonna. That's not how. And so what I realized was that it's not. It's a game, and like I think by the end of third year, what I had understood was that I felt like I have cracked their code. I've cracked the code of the elite, upper class of this country, which is that they talk in this certain language that you have to learn, and you don't have to do it, you don't have to believe in it, but you just have to learn it. And I remember even one of my supervisors said to me in second or third year, he was like, Suhaiymah, like your essays, like the content is there, like it's fine, it's good, but you need to write a bit more, like probably one of those Eton boys that you don't like. And I was like, whoa, okay, like you sent me the challenge, what do you mean? And I found that annoying, but I knew what he meant, and he was just like, you need to sound like you back yourself, but in this very like arrogant way. But I would say that the outcome of that is that I understand how you it's weird because I feel like I have these tools at my disposal I can use when I need to. I don't like to use them like in my everyday life, but like if I'm in a debate with some like cocky man, I'm like, I can turn it on, do you know what I mean? And I like know what words to use.
You can detect it as well.
You can detect it,
so when
yes.
politicians are playing that game, they're playing
exactly,
that game.
Exactly. And I feel like it's like an armor. It's like it's like, oh, two can tango, It's like, I know that. I know exactly what you were saying when you're like, oh, where's the evidence for your da-da-da? I'm like, yeah, so I feel like that was a unintended consequence of the degree, but it's like the one thing that I'm like, you put me in any situation that like, is generally quite intimidating. I feel like I've been in there before. Do you know what I mean? Like I was in that supervision. I did it. I got through it. Or like, I kind of feel that that's something that's like, yeah, it's like spending enough time with these people. It rubs off on you that you see it, but you also have the advantage of seeing through it because you're like, well, that's fake. That's so fake, and that is not the way that arguments are done. But here it's just like, if I can persuade you, then I'm right.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so if you just have to persuade them in their words. So I felt like it was a real like. Code cracking, basically.
Awesome. Do you have a question? Look like you had a question.
No? I was going to mention something.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question. So you've talked about something that you cherish or something that you've talked about how Cambridge has benefited you in 2 ways. Do you have any regrets about your time at Cambridge? Things that you wish you had done differently?
Yeah, I just wish that in that first year I had just thrown myself in. I wish that I hadn't worried so much about like. How hard I had to work. I wish I had spent less time working, 100%. By third year, I was working like 4 hours a day max. Whereas first year, I was like 9, 10, like get it done, be there every day. And I did so much better in third year than first year. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, that's something I regret is putting all that time in. And just not throwing myself in. And I think also spending any time doing things that I didn't enjoy. Because I think I spent a lot of time doing things I didn't enjoy, which was, sitting around people who I was like... and just like, okay, haha, drinking looks so funny, haha, and that kind of thing. So I think that was just I would just, if I could, I would just like take back that first year, do it and start first year at second year.
Okay.
And then have one more year at uni, which was like a fully,
I've got one more question before we potentially move on to the next stage of your journey. So my question is, do you think, based on your experience, that Oxbridge as like an entity deserves to be championed the way that it currently and traditionally has?
Absolutely not.
And then unpack that. Why do you think that?
So obviously Oxbridge is seen as like the elite prestige place for education, and if you come out of it, if you get into it, you're super clever and knowledgeable, and if you get out of it, you're super knowledgeable and clever. I think the reason that does not stand up to scrutiny is that obviously in the first place, like how you get into Oxbridge is based on not on cleverness or on merit, but on the situation that you found yourself in. And by that, I mean what I was saying earlier, that like the education system isn't really what will get you there. It's more about the capital that you have at home and in your home life, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is that not necessarily, okay, but what I mean by that is that the access that you have at least to some capital, and that might be like a teacher at school who gives you that investment. But I think in general, it's the people who are here are not here because they're clever. The majority of people who are here, I'll just like add that as majority, are here because, they went to private schools, they went to grammar schools, they had like university educated parents, they like had somebody knew how to apply to university, like all these things, which again, it's that code cracking, right? Like they knew the code, they knew the game. And the other reason is that, these institutions are, prestigious because they are exclusive. They're not prestigious because they're particularly. It's like a good neighborhood, right? People are like, oh, it's a really good neighborhood. Why? Because it's exclusive and it excludes, black and brown people, working class people. That's what we associate with goodness and like something that we value. I think it's the same with an education institution. What makes it good is that it's so exclusive and so difficult to get into. It's inaccessible. That's what makes it good, apparently. And then within that, within the education that you learn, like I can speak for a history degree, it's not the best or most important knowledge in the world at all. You don't come out super clever. What you come out with is a series of narratives about the past that are the ones that have traditionally been told by the elites that have been educated in this institution. And so that's political. What you measure as clever is always political, because whose knowledge you decide is important and valuable is always a reflection of, the goings on in the society at that time. So the fact that we think that people who come to Cambridge and Oxford are really clever is more a reflection of what we're trying to say about the society that we live in and about whose lives we think are valuable, whose we think are important, whose we don't. I think it's wrong.
It reminds me of this Chris Rock joke, where he talks about he's obviously like a world famous comedian, multi-millionaire, everything. He's like, do you know who my neighbour is? He goes, it's a dentist. He's like, this guy's not the best dentist in the world. He's just a dentist, just a white guy that's a dentist. And it kind of reminds me of this like good neighborhood thing, in that like if you are not the norm, you have done a mad like you've probably done. Do you know what I mean? Or you've had to like do a lot more. Whereas it just reminds me of that.
Now, having said all of that, I agree. I fundamentally agree with you. But so having said all of that. If you were your year 12, year 13, myself, you know what I'm about to ask, would you still have applied to Cambridge?
Because ultimately the fact that Cambridge is not a reflection of the cleverest people in the world doesn't detract from the fact that people perceive it to be. Okay. And what you get, the only way I can put it is like, you get social capital. What do I mean by that? I mean that you come out of Cambridge with a degree that says you went to Cambridge University. Now, to me, what I have started to compare it to is a police badge, right? In the sense that we know that the institution it represents is violent, is racist, is problematic, exclusive, elite. There's lots of problems. But what that badge does, it gives you access to different places. People will listen to you. They think you have authority. And I think if you can recognize that it is a police badge and it's not, something just really like harmless, then I think you're in a good position, because you can go, okay, that's gonna be my way to try to undo the police infrastructure.
To work within the system, essentially.
Or but not even, right? Because what you can do with it, and what I like to think that I do is use that to get into spaces and places and people's ears who wouldn't listen to me if I hadn't gone to Cambridge, right? Because at the end of the day, if I hadn't gone to Cambridge, I think there's a lot of people for whom I would not be palatable, because it would be like, oh, she's some random like Leeds girl, like who's she? If I hadn't gone to Cambridge, I would not be seen as, oh, you're so eloquent and articulate. That's a really interesting point that you've just made there. And as I say, it is code cracking. And so I think that I wouldn't take it back, because it's given me a tool, a weapon in my armory that I believe, if used if recognized for what it is, first off, because really the harm of it is if you're happy to take it and then just reproduce that and go, oh, I worked really hard, pulled myself up with my bootstraps, and no one helped me get here, so get in on your own. But if you go like, okay, this is like, let me just, as soon as I leave, let me start telling everyone how crazy that is and how bad it is and how it's not the cleverest and it's really like built on all these things, I think you're doing something, you're subverting it almost, right? Because you're going like, I'm going to be listened to by these people, but let me just tell you that there are all these other forms of knowledge and knowing, and then, the cleverest people I know didn't go to Oxbridge and all of that. And so, yeah, I think for what it's worth, and I guess going back to Mr. Pierce, right, that it would give me the most options, I believe that it has, because what I do is so, I suppose, unconventional in the sense of the way I'm allowed to spend my time and make my money, that I wonder if I would have had the ability to do that if I hadn't had that experience at Cambridge.
Yes, you talk too much sense.
Oh, I love it.
Okay, so what we want to touch on is your master's experience at SOAS. So tell us a little bit about that and the thought process behind doing the masters and at SOAS.
Yeah,
and particularly post-colonial studies.
Yeah,
that's a very course.
Yeah, so actually it really follows on quite nicely from that conversation, because when I was in my third year, I was becoming very aware of like, what I'm being taught is a specific form of history, someone's specific ideas of what history is. And I did my whole third year dissertation on, I did an oral history project. So I interviewed my grandma and other women, and it was about the experiences of immigrant women from Pakistan to West Yorkshire in the 1960s, which is not conventional for the type of history that is done in Cambridge, and it's not archival and etc. So I was interested in these questions around whose knowledge counts as knowledge, whose knowledge is valuable, what do we, whose knowledge goes in the archives. And so those questions around knowledge production made me interested in post-colonial studies, because that's what post-colonial studies essentially is in a way. It's about the kinds of, the ways we think about the world that we're in now. It's quite theoretical. And so I was interested in doing that, and I had over the kind of the stuff that I'd written through Fly and stuff, I was very interested in colonialism and the way it shaped how my identity and how I was understood by people, and how that had constructed race and gender and class and all these things. So I knew that I wanted to study something like post-colonial studies. There are only two places that do it in the UK, Goldsmiths and SOAS. I applied to both of them. And the reason that I was really attracted to SOAS was that it had a reputation for being really just the opposite of Cambridge, like a radical, critical space where, people are often protesting the university itself, where people are, there's no question of whether racism exists. It's like, yeah, of course the world is racist and it's structured by race. Like, wow, that sounded so refreshing. There were so many people of colour there. It was London. I thought I had like such a romanticised view of London. I was like, that sounds amazing. And yeah, so that was sort of, I think they were all the reasons I was kind of attracted to it. And I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do after my degree anyway. So it's kind of at the start of third year, I was like, I think that's the thing I should do.
Well, how was that received back in Leeds?
Back in Leeds, up the line, in West Yorkshire. To be honest, like, back in Leeds is just my mum, and my mum is just like, whatever. She's just like, whatever you want to do really sounds fine. And, it made sense because there wasn't anything that I hadn't done, because a lot of my friends were doing like internships and stuff in the summers and the Christmas and stuff, and I was reading bell hooks and Audrey Lorde, do you know what I mean? So I was like, I don't think there's anything that's like caught my eye. And I know what I love. The thing that I love is ideas. So I was like, I'm gonna go think about some ideas. And yeah, and it was yeah. So it was fine, and it was good, and yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about SOAS.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was good because there's actually a lot of scholarships at SOAS, and so when you get a scholarship at SOAS, it makes it really, obviously makes it a lot easier because you're not having to worry about finances. And I think that made the master's experience really nice in the sense that I wasn't working at the same time. I didn't have to work, and that kind of set the ground for it to be a time for me to really just think about the things that I was doing. And so SOAS was just completely different. I remember in the first week I wrote a blog post that was like Cambridge versus SOAS, but it was because I was just like, oh my God, because it was like, it was the opposite. It was the opposite in the sense of what it felt to be in that space, because every single person was a brown hijabi, and I was like, no, you can't be like, oh, that brown hijab. You'll be like, oh, Suhaiymah, you don't know her, okay, I don't know how to describe her, and I was like, wow. And I felt anonymous. I didn't feel hyper visible, but I also felt like I knew who I was so much more than when I had arrived at Cambridge. I was like 21, 22, and I was like, I'm a grown person in the world. I have like thoughts and opinions about things, and I know what I stand for. So in that sense, it was partly the institution, it was partly me, like, met at the right moment. And
because SOAS and Cambridge seem so kind of opposite and kind of conflicting, during your initial kind of interactions with people at SOAS, due to the fact that you did have the Cambridge badge on, and you did just
wear a badge just to say
you did just graduate from Cambridge. Yeah. Like, was it somewhat difficult at the early stages to kind of interact with people because they knew that you came from that other place?
No, because the thing is that everyone obviously puts Cambridge on a pedestal.
Oh, okay.
So it was this weird thing where even though it was radical and critical, they were like, oh, sick, you went to Cambridge. And I was like, oh, lol. And also because I was very critical of it. My narration wasn't I went to Cambridge. So it was like, oh, I went to Cambridge, so I'm very relieved to be here. You know what I mean? So that it's like instantly tells you, it's like signalling what my politics are. And SOAS was amazing because not the institution, not the course. In fact, the course was quite underwhelming, and me and some of my friends, because I was already in this mindset of like, you just do what you need to do, right? So me and my friends, rewrote our curriculum for our course. We presented it at a conference for like decolonizing the institution. We like, you know what I mean? Like we were just doing the things that mattered to us and kept on writing. And that was just all going on. And I mean, with masters, it's completely different because you're just doing your research, right? So I was just reading all the kinds of things that were like much more to do with me now. And it was like, you know, how Muslims imagined in Britain, how does the state imagine and think, not imagine, like see and conceive of Muslim people. And that was like, wow, this is like explaining so much about my experiences. So that was all different. I mean, the best thing about it was meeting, so like in the master's cohort, there's like 50% international students. And I had never met like, the majority of my friends, really sadly, were international students. I mean, because now they don't live here, so it's like, and the reason that was so important was just that like I had been so long in this like British-centric way of thinking about everything, and I was just like ripped out of it, and I was like, oh my God, like nothing. It's not all about Cambridge is structurally violent. It's like, wow, everything is whoa. There's so much more going on, and so yeah, it was really different. And like most of my close friends were like very. They were also a lot older than me because I went into my master's quite young, remember? Because if you like go straight from uni, you're going to be one of the younger ones. And I just felt like I was surrounded by all these, you know, it was completely different to, I think at Cambridge I felt very like mature, I suppose, for my age. Whereas there I was like, oh my God, like everyone's been in the world and they've done stuff and they know stuff, and they all had like backgrounds in, you know, like my flatmates were like, they'd worked in like all sorts of different fields around the world. And it was really... I think it just really expanded my politics and my critical thinking, I think, in a way that was much more like experience based.
Before we kind of wrap up the podcast, like just because I feel like it would be like if I was listening to this, like the question I'd ask you, like, do you have any kind of book recommendations for people that are interested in these types of topics, post-colonialism and the rest?
I think, I mean, it's quite cliche to say it, but I think read Edward Said's Orientalism is a good start. Read Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Masks. I think read Black feminist theory, because, you know, that's really the start point of a lot of bringing together. Because if you can read Orientalism, you can read Frantz Fanon, but to get like the real crux of like what does it mean for these things to all be lived, and like specifically if you're a woman of colour, and I think if you're not as well, read them. Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, Patricia Hill Collins, and Angela Davis specifically because also she does the good work of linking this to like prisons, and I think understanding how the state has a role in all of this. These aren't just when we say like racism interacts with sexism, interacts with blah blah blah. Well, actually, like how do those things like impact? Like I suppose like how do we feel them? How do we interact with them? It's through the state and the institutions that exist. So I would say those things, and I would say Assata Shakur, by Malcolm X. I think just like
cool.
Yeah.
My friend calls my autobiography of Malcolm X the woke person starter pack.
The woke person. That's funny.
That was my first book.
That's funny.
A lot of people is like, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't get old. Yeah.
I need to read it again ASAP.
Yeah, I reread it recently. It was.
Cool. So we're gonna wrap this up, and the way that we wrap up our podcast is by asking our guests 2 questions.
Okay.
Like every guest get the same 2 questions.
Okay. Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm gonna start with the first one. The first one is, what experience in life?
I can tell this is gonna be a big one.
Okay. So in life, what experience of adversity are you most proud to have overcome?
Okay. Ooh. Oh, you should have set me these beforehand. This is like not an on the spot.
But it's cool.
It's not an on the spot question. It's interesting because like what you count as an experience of adversity, I feel like just changes with time, and like because in a way, like when I reread my diaries of first year, which I don't do a lot, but I did recently, like I'm really proud of that girl who like she was just having such a bad time. Like when I read, I'm like, she was having a bad time. Like, I feel so sorry for this person who then I'm like, oh my God, that was me. And I think I feel proud of like that on my own. Like I just was able to develop into the kind of person that I like third year me, who I really admire who she was, and like that she really believed in things, and she, like I don't agree with everything she thought now. That's fine because she was 21. And I think that I'm really proud of like having, I suppose, just on my own, being kind of feeling very like abandoned in a way, kind of just and feeling so out of my depth and so like in a just unfamiliar situation, and like by unfamiliar I mean like all these structural violences that were at play that I didn't know what to call or name. I'm proud that I was able to, that something good was able to come out of that. That it wasn't a means for me to become burdened and dampened and silenced, but it was a means for me to expand and like become somebody that I really like think is cool.
I think you're cool too.
I'm talking about third Jimmy.
So Suhaiymah, where do you go to for inspiration?
Okay, now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't sound really cliche, but I think, and I don't know if this is like interesting, but I think that like while I was at Cambridge, perhaps Islam played a less big role in my like politics and my life than now. And I think now if I'm feeling, I don't know, like the last few days I've just been like really overwhelmed by stuff that's going on, and I just like the only thing that I can turn to and find like real just reassurance and like a moment to breathe. And I think I don't know what inspiration is. I don't know if that's inspiration, but I think that is inspiration to me. Is praying or reading the Quran or sort of just turning back to like books that are about the bigger picture. Because I think I think that's what it is. It's like what's inspiring is remembering that this is not it. This is not all. And because I think if you think about first year me, the reason I was so like burden is because it felt so all-consuming. It was like I'm here and this is everything, and this is everything forever, and this is all that matters, and then all of that. Whereas now I think, even though I feel like there's so much more that I actually do, it feels much more manageable, and that's because I feel like I'm much more aware of this bigger picture, which is that this life is like transitory and fleeting, and I'm not really trying to measure what I'm doing. Basically, I've dropped the formula, right? I'm not trying to measure what I'm doing by the end goals that I will achieve in this life. And I think I find a lot of solace and a lot of inspiration in that, because it's just like I don't have to, I'm measuring things much more by whether they matter and not about whether they happen. And I think that's like a really big difference, because you don't do your GCSEs because they matter. You do because like you need to get them done. Whereas, everything I do right now, none of it's going to get me money, none of it's going to get me like a necessarily good status or a job, but it all feels like to me, it urgently matters. And so I think, and the only reason I'm able to live that life is because the thing that I feel driven by is a different life in another place. And I think that's, to me, is that, that's a done deal. That's really, I find that really, I don't know if, maybe I've gone more for like what I tend to for reassurance. But I think it is. I think it is. I found that inspiring as well as reassuring.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit cliche, but it is.
No.
It is true now. It wasn't always true.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, like before we like close off the kind of the podcast, is there anything you want to kind of say to our younger students that potentially are likely to be watching this video? Any kind of words of advice?
Yeah.
Where can they maybe potentially interact with you? What do you have coming up?
Okay, wow, I love this range
those
of...
types of stuff. Yeah, just go kind of talk to
Okay,
the camera.
I think I talk to the camera.
Yeah,
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
the camera, yeah,
Okay. No, I think my big thing is like only do what you actually want to do. I think that a lot of times when I was at Cambridge, I was also meeting a lot of A-level students. I was doing a lot of access work, and people often, I feel like, were doing what they thought they should do or what somebody else wanted them to do. And I think you're less likely to be driven and like love and like care about the life you're leading if it comes from those things rather than something that you really care about. And I think if you're able to, and if you're able to persuade the people around you to do what you care about, then do it. And that might be art, that might be being a makeup artist, that might be being a musician, whatever it is. But I think there'll be something, there's a reason that thing drives you. And so I really just I can't stress that more, because you probably have a vision of like what you want your life to look like in 5 years, and I can guarantee you it's not going to look like that. And I think that like what I'm doing now, and I alhamdulillah, I love what I'm able to do with my time and my life now. But no way could I have planned it. I wouldn't have been able to make a roadmap and go, oh, da da da. Instead, I was just like, if I do history and I love history and I care about it, that'll work. Oh, okay, I found these ideas really interesting in history. I'm going to go do that. Oh, I found that really frustrating. I want to write about that. And that, I think there's a much more present way to live your life as well. But that would be one thing. The other thing is, don't put so much stress on yourself to do everything by the book. Like, play the system a little bit. So, like, again, going back to personal statement, when you write a personal statement, you don't have to have read Karl Marx. You can just be like, I watched this TV show about such and such. And I remember in mine, I was just like, I watched this film that was kind of set in World War One, kind of. Oh, that's interesting. And if you know, like, that's fine, because that is... You just be genuine, like I don't know, a risk of being cliche, above all else, be yourself, because like you're never gonna, I don't think you can regret that much, basically. And I think that you're gonna have to live with the decisions that you make. So I think, try and make ones that you're happy with.
And that's it. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Oh, great. Wow, that was funny.
How'd you find that?
Yeah, really interesting, because I haven't spoken about most of that stuff for like years.